I want to ask you a question about the scenario with terror in the world at the moment, with ISIS and the repercussions in other countries, particularly Australia and us. So let's work from us at the beginning. What is the scenario here, as best you can tell it?
Well, I mean, let me take a slightly different point just for 1 second. In terms of ISIS, I'm deeply worried about them. They have very strong motivations. They're brutal. They're highly sophisticated. They're well organised, and they're spreading out. So, in terms of the risk to New Zealand, we are not immune. So, we know that there are people fighting, foreign fighters fighting overseas, and we know and can identify at least a reasonably sized group that want to leave and join that cause. So,
you mean here in New Zealand?
Yes.
What do you mean a reasonably sized group?
Can't go into those numbers today, but it's clearly more than one. And
well, a group one would think of as at least 4 or 5 at the very least.
Yeah. Well, that would be a pretty fair assessment, and you could potentially be more than that. So, in other words, look, it would be naive of everyone to think that if this issue is prevalent in the United States and in the UK and in France and in Canada and in Australia, there wouldn't be a smaller but proportional group in New Zealand. And for all of the stuff that went on about the intelligence agencies, they are the focus of the intelligence agencies. It's people like that where the SIS or less so GCSB, but the SIS would be involved. But sometimes if they're overseas, GCSB. All
right. So this brings into question the spying issue.
Yeah.
In general. Sydney Morning Herald this morning reacting to the Australian government, metadata and the subversion of privacy. The core government responsibility of protecting lives should not come at the cost of illiberal privacy subversions as represented by the data retention proposal. That's in Australia.
Yes.
And many of us here agree with that.
That's right, but that was one of the reasons why, in the end, I drew the conclusion that we shouldn't go to the wholesale proposal of cyber protection. Even though, as I said before the election, a lot of New Zealanders would like that, we went to an entity-wide basis. So Cortex is that cyber protection system. It's in place on government agencies and some companies that want it, but we do not have the massive data retention or mass surveillance against New Zealanders by GCSB.
What would it take to extend that coverage?
In my case, I would have to undo some of the public statements I've made, because I've set up a 2-step warranting process, which effectively stops me in the oversight of of those agencies by the Inspector General. So I think legally you could test the case legally whether you could do it, but short of actually having the physical capability, which is one of the things that defeats the argument of these guys like Greenwald, we actually don't have the physical capability. That was what they looked at when they were putting together the business case. But I would actually have to undo the public statements I've made, and those public statements feed into, as my third reading speech does, the way the courts would interpret the law.
There is a belief that the United States agencies do the spying here, so that you can say that.
Yeah, so that's definitely not the case. We don't use our agencies to circumvent the law. We can't access that information without a warrant. So it's just simply not true. What is true is the United States, as I understand it, have broader surveillance capability. New Zealand just happens to be one of 192 countries where data may possibly be collected, but we're not targeted. They don't do our dirty work for us.
No.